What's up? Welcome to a video that had quite a turbulent creation process. You may notice that there's no video in this video. I realized that I couldn't upload clips from my PlayStation that were longer than 5 minutes, which is my only way to get footage. This led to huge changes in the video. Initially it was supposed to be on the P5R arc only. Now it's an overview of all of them. I decided that in place of video, I'll put images of my favorite moments in each arc. I hope that's not a deal breaker, so without further ado, my thoughts on each arc in Persona 5. The first arc we'll be talking about is the Kamoshida arc. We're going in order. It's a very strong start to the game, starting off with the characters and their struggles. Ryuji's path to the Kamoshida on the track team really sells why he hates the man so much. It'd be fine if it was just, this guy does bad things, so I hate him. And that's definitely part of it. However, the fact that Kamoshida manipulated Ryuji into lashing out at him in order to disband the track team, just because he didn't like it, really sells the state Ryuji isn't at the start of the game, alone and angry. His former teammates blame him for losing their team, he's shunned by the wider school community for what happened with them, and everyone looks down on him, all because Kamoshida saw the track team as unnecessary and needed a pawn to use as a scapegoat. Next is our character, Ren, not Akira. He transferred to Shujin after being expelled from his previous school for being falsely convicted of assault. Keeping with the trend of wrecking anything he disagrees with, Kamoshida is one of the students to leak Ren's criminal record and spread rumors, causing him to immediately be outcast and treated as a dangerous man who could snap at any moment. Finally, An and Shiho's suffering at the hands of Kamoshida's perversion is uncomfortably realistic in how it happens and the effects it has. Shiho is a starter on the school volleyball team, which Kamoshida presides over. At some point, he begins to threaten Shiho's best friend, An, with taking her off the team unless An does favors for him. Now, I don't believe it ever actually went that far, but that's 100% what he wanted from her. This causes An's reputation to be destroyed. She's known as Kamoshida's bitch, easy, slut. All of this in the name of An protecting her best friend. Shiho doesn't have it easy despite this, though. As a member of the volleyball team, she, along with all the other members, are physically abused. None of them dare to speak up because if they stay on the team, their futures are secured. Kamoshida was an Olympic medal winner, and the team is fairly famous in terms of schools. That's why. One day when An finally stands up for herself, when Kamoshida's calling for his favor, the effects of the decision are the springboard for everything to follow. Since Kamoshida couldn't get what he wanted, he calls Shiho to the PE staff room, where he beats her and does that by force. The very next day, Shiho is so desperate for an escape from what happened that she attempts suicide by jumping off the roof of the school. Thankfully, she survives, but is in a coma for quite a while. Ultimately, An feels responsible for this, and it causes her immense guilt. Seeing these three gain power to fight back against this bastard in the metaverse with the power of personas is so satisfying. Kamoshida's basically invincible in reality, but by changing his heart, he would finally pay for what he'd done, and so many of the students he abused would be saved. Once Kamoshida's palace has been conquered, An's cutscene is absolutely amazing, and takes the cake for my favorite moment in the arc. She has the choice to kill Kamoshida's shadow, causing a mental shutdown in him, or sparing the shadow, making him have a change of heart, which would make him confess his crimes. Initially, she's tempted to kill him. After all, he's nearly caused Shiho's death. In the end, though, she spares him, not because killing is wrong, but because, in her own words, I believe there are fates worse than death. She wants this man to suffer for the rest of his life for what he's done. It's definitely deserved. When the day comes that Kamoshida's heart changes, he doesn't just confess. He becomes a sniveling husk begging for forgiveness. He seems unable to think of anything else besides the weight of his own sins. Which isn't really what you'd expect when you hear of a change of heart. I like the idea versus reality of it. Based on the name, you'd expect the person to better themselves and own up to what they did. It's kind of a shock at first. Regardless, this is his fate, to torment himself for what he's done for the rest of his life. Good. In the end, our characters decide to form the Phantom Thieves, a group dedicated to helping the weak and bringing justice to those the law cannot. As I said to begin, this is a really good start to the game, and while trying to think of things I don't like, I genuinely couldn't think of anything story-related. Either way, I rate this arc as a 10 out of 10, a perfect start to this wonderful game. Now we're on to the game's second arc, Madarame. This one's good, however it lacks in some places. Not where it matters though, the main conflict is done quite well. Let's begin with Yusuke and his relationship to Madarame. Yusuke, like our other characters, is an outcast. Due to his eccentric nature, the only person he really bonds with is his foster father, Ichiryo-sai Madarame. He took Yusuke in after his mother's death when he was only 3, and raised him fostering his skill in the arts. One of Madarame's paintings, the Sayuri, inspired Yusuke's devotion to art. He talks about the painting's beauty often, and models his own style off of it. Yusuke feels as if he owes his life to Madarame, which is totally fair if this sanitized version of the events suits you. What really happened was Yusuke's mother suffered a seizure in front of Madarame, who stood by and let her die. Why would he do this, you ask? Well, it's simply because he wanted to take her self-portrait and credit it to himself. Madarame would go on to change the art by painting over the child and entitled it the Sayuri. The painting would go on to make Madarame famous for the mystery of her expression. What I'm about to say is basically just me repeating the game, but Madarame's theft and defacing of something as personal as Yusuke's mother portrayed herself and her child is absolutely horrible. This isn't the only questionable thing Madarame's done. He repeatedly took in artistic youths and stole their work from them. If they dared to speak up, he'd just use his influence in the art world to crush them. This led to one young man's despair and death. He couldn't handle losing his passion. For Yusuke's whole life, he'd been in denial of Madarame's questionable actions because he felt that he owed his life to the man. Yusuke's wake-up call comes when our characters begin to probe into the rumors surrounding Madarame. At first, he sticks to his denial, but the longer it goes on, the more unsure of himself Yusuke is. I may as well mention the weakest part of the arc right now. It's our character's constant doubting of Madarame's guilt, even after having one of his former students attest to what he did. It even goes on after they enter his palace. You know, the distorted desires. Ultimately, though, that doesn't bring down the arc much. For me, Yusuke's eventual acceptance of what Madarame did upon witnessing it for himself is a great scene. Hell, his entire character arc is insanely good, from the main story to the side content. I'm not going to get into that stuff, though, right now. I'll save that for another time. Anyway, as I was saying, once Yusuke learns what Madarame did to his mother and her art, he ceases any denial he had left. Yusuke officially joins the Phantom Thieves after changing Madarame's heart in order to expand his horizons and better himself. He even has an albeit fake version of the original Sayuri, which was the core of Madarame's desire. Also, can I mention how great Madarame's confession scene is? It's almost sad how pathetic he becomes crying his eyes out on national television. But, like Kamoshida, it's deserved. While this arc for me has much less emotional investment than the previous, I cannot deny the effectiveness and how it handles Yusuke and Madarame. For that alone, I think that this has to be one of the better stories told in the game. Probably an 8 out of 10. While I was for the most part just praising how the last arc was handled, the same cannot be said for the third arc, Kaneshiro. There's just nothing substantial here to talk about. Kaneshiro himself has like 2 brief appearances in the game. That being when he blackmails your characters and when he receives the calling card. You don't even get a confession scene. That didn't even click with me until writing the script. The arc isn't helped at all by the fact that Kaneshiro isn't even slightly interesting. It's not a case of an interesting character with tragically short screen time. It's more so a bland character with no chances to be elaborated on. They do attempt to do something with his character in the palace, but it's too little too late. While Kaneshiro and his organization are extremely weak antagonists, in my opinion, there are some redeeming qualities in this arc at least. For example, our main character, Makoto Nijima. Allow me to make one thing clear. If you're one of the idiots who thinks she's an entitled brat who acts like she's mistreated when she has it better off than everyone else, you completely miss the point of her character and are willfully ignoring the trauma she endured just because you don't like how she was mean to you in her introduction. Her acting like that was a direct result of her feeling like she has to please every authority figure around. The principal put her up to figuring out who was behind the Phantom Thieves incident, after all. Not to mention, he held her letter of recommendation hostage if she didn't. Makoto has no mother, her dad was killed by a gang, she has no friends, she's chained down by the expectations of her sister in school, and only does what others want of her. She never acts on her own behalf. You're telling me this doesn't justify her emotional damage? Whatever. Sorry for the rant, it just bugs me that so many people, or at least a vocal minority, misinterpret Makoto. In my mind, she's one of the most well-written characters in Persona 5. Her eventual breaking of the chains she's been trapped in for so long, and her growth as a person because of that, is nothing short of great. How she looks up to her late father is a nice thing too, a good change from the broken relationships most of our characters have with their family. I love how she wants to become a police commissioner not only to try and fix the force's corruption, but also to carry on her father's legacy. Once again, unfortunately, I'll have to stop myself, so I'll have something to talk about in my eventual confidant video. Another thing the arc includes that somewhat redeems it in my eyes is the introduction of Goro Akechi. To be honest, I'm unsure whether I should actually include it as part of the arc, but hey, it's my video. I'll talk about him more when he's more relevant to the story, but just know he's definitely one of my favorites. To me, he was instantly interesting, and I really bought into the rival thing. In the end, the main story of this arc doesn't really do anything for me, but Makoto's personal journey is very well done and redeems the arc by a lot. Let's say without her, the arc would be a 3 out of 10, but with her, maybe a 6. Next up is a fairly unique arc and one that sets up some intrigue for things to come. For starters, the arc has no real antagonist. Medjed was never a true threat, so I discount them. Our focus character for the arc is Futaba Sakura, the daughter of the man who took Ren in after transferring to Tokyo. She'd remained hidden from you until this point in the game. She would have remained hidden if not for the fake Medjed's threats on Japan. She contacts you under the alias Alibaba, immediately knowing you're a Phantom Thief. She requests that if you change the heart of the target she gives you, she will deal with Medjed. Her target is revealed to be herself, and when the Phantom Thieves begin inquiring into who exactly Futaba Sakura is, they suspect Sojiro is possibly abusing his daughter. Thankfully, this is untrue. After the thieves deduce that Futaba and Alibaba are one and the same, they wonder why she'd want her own heart changed. Ultimately, Sojiro reveals who Futaba is and why she was kept hidden. Futaba had become a shut-in after her mother died due to an apparent suicide right in front of her. Blaming herself for this after she read a suicide note saying her mother wished she was never born, Futaba's mental health declined greatly. She hallucinates her mother's dying moments and the people who blamed her for her mother's death. After her mother's death, Futaba was sent to live with her uncle, who ended up being an abusive asshole. Then, Sojiro took her in. He initially attempted to help Futaba, but he couldn't get through to her, so he just resigned himself to leaving her alone. Their only real interactions would be meals. Futaba requested the Phantom Thieves to change her heart so she'd heal from her past trauma, and in desperation she threatens to leak their identities if they do not. Regardless of the threat, the Phantom Thieves couldn't ignore someone suffering so badly, although Futaba's offer to stop Medjed definitely sweetens the deal. On the day of the heist, the Phantom Thieves must give Futaba the calling card directly, so as to dispel the cognition blocking their path. While in her room, they discover documents on the cognitive realm, and when asked how Futaba knows about it, it's revealed that her mother was a researcher in that field, called cognitive science. It's an important aspect of the story that I will not be touching on. During their heist, the thieves are attacked by a cognition of Futaba's mother, warped and monstrous. It proves to be too much for them. However, Futaba had entered her own palace and encountered her shadow, who urged her to find the truth within herself. Through her hallucinations and self-doubt, Futaba finds the truth, within her repressed memories. Her mother would never have told her she shouldn't have been born. She loved Futaba. After remembering this, she concludes that her mother was somehow killed by the men who read the suicide note. Now that she has remembered what really happened, Futaba awakens to her persona and is able to help the Phantom Thieves in their battle against the cognition. Once victory is achieved, it is discovered that there's no treasure to steal since Futaba awakened to a persona. Now that they helped her, she will get rid of Medjed for them. One thing, she is completely out. It's a really dumb way to rationalize the wait for the deadline. After a maximum of about 2.5 weeks, she wakes up fully and defeats Medjed. On the last day possible. Not that it really mattered. Futaba sorta imprints on Ren and hides behind him whenever there's a bunch of people around. Our characters decide that they have to help Futaba get over her people anxiety, which they kind of achieve after half a week. The only stipulation is that she'll freak out if she's alone with a bunch of strangers. When asked if she'll join the Phantom Thieves, Futaba agrees. Not for helping the weak, though, but to find whoever was responsible for her mother's death. Honestly, I think this arc is the absolute best in terms of character story. Futaba's struggles are significantly different to any of the other Phantom Thieves, and her desperation to change herself is really tragic. In the end, when she overcomes her trauma of her own power instead of having her heart changed, I think that's what was a great decision. Having her overcome her struggles with her own power is much more powerful than having her be saved by our characters. I rate this arc a 9 out of 10. It's a great story of a girl overcoming her trauma and bettering herself. Not much else to say. Now we venture into what I believe is considered the most controversial arc from both a story and gameplay perspective. My opinion of the arc is rather high, but there are some issues that can't be ignored. Chief among them being the inciting incident of the arc, Morgana's temper tantrum. It's 5 in-game days of Morgana acting out of character and trying to burn bridges with all of his friends. I don't think the conflict itself is bad, but when dragged out like this, it just makes Mono look awful. It totally makes sense for Morgana to feel as if the team doesn't need him anymore. Futaba and Makoto give the support he used to. You likely haven't had him in combat for a while, and he is treated as a joke by Ryuji. Though, that's mutual bashing, which is another aspect that I quite dislike. I really love how the conflict is resolved, though. It's one of my favorite moments in the whole game. It's as simple as Morgana being encouraged by our new team member, Haru, into not denying his true feelings and to stop putting up a facade. From here on, the star of the show is Haru. She seeks out the Phantom Thieves for help in breaking free of her father's grasp. She wants no part in the politically arranged marriage he set up for her. Her father, Kunikazu Okumura, won't listen, so she has to find her own way to get out. She decides the best chance is to change his heart. Coincidentally, this aligns with the Phantom Thieves' goals. They believe him to be the orchestrator of the mental shutdowns. In their final confrontation against Okumura's shadow, he reveals that he cares about profit above all else. Not that that's really a secret, but hearing the man himself say it is different. I hear a lot of people say that Morgana steals Haru's scene here, but I personally don't see it. It would just be a retread of what happened during Haru's awakening scene. The big, important, mind-blowing event of the arc is Okumura Shadow's assassination. The Black Mask assassin we've heard about a couple times finally makes an appearance. You don't see any effect of this for a while, assuming you do the palace as early as possible, like a sane person. The payoff is crazy, though. Okumura's death live on television is one of the most memorable moments in the game and sets up some of the best things to come from the story, such as Akechi's deal. For the most part, I really enjoy the arc, but the beginning drags it down significantly. I'll give it this, though. The conclusion of Morgana's character arc and the beginning of Haru's are very good, and even the scales for me. I'd give this one a 7 out of 10. And here we have it, where the peak begins. This is the Nijima arc. Now that the Phantom Thieves are hated by the public for Okumura's death, Akechi extends his assistance on the condition that the thieves disband after this final job. The scene at the school festival where Akechi corners you and reveals what he knows never fails to get me excited. For the whole game, you've been wondering when he'll discover your identities, because there's no question of if. Accepting the deal is bittersweet and a little scary considering you know that things are going to go wrong. While I can say I saw Akechi's betrayal coming a mile away, I can't say I thought he'd try to kill me. That turn for his character was very much unexpected. Though in his 8th confidant rank, he makes it clear that he has some sort of battle lust. May I mention that that is also another of my favorite moments? I'm getting ahead of myself, that's not related to the topic. The reveal that the casino you saw in the prologue was none other than Sai Nijima's palace is absolutely awesome, considering you most likely saw her as a background character for the interrogation, and Makoto's home segments. In the final section of the arc, looping back in the prologue and experiencing full context of it is great, and it's very tense. Once you fully sync up with the interrogation, that tension is higher than ever. The question of whether or not to turn your friends in, well, not a difficult one in retrospect, caught me off guard, and I really had to think about it. I knew one would be a bad ending, and after choosing to not sell out the thieves and being executed by Akechi, I genuinely thought I chose incorrectly. Up until the Velvet Room section, I was waiting for credits to roll or a game over screen to show up. On top of that, the reveal of how you got out of being shot in the head is amazing, and took me like 3 playthroughs to fully understand. I kept trying to poke holes in it, but I couldn't. Executing such a huge airtight twist is nothing short of impressive. The only issue I actually have is the morgue explanation. It's hard to believe that nobody checked for a body. Granted, that's what comes back to bite you if you fail to conquer Shido's palace in time. That's why I let it slide. Now, how'd I rate the arc? 9 out of 10. The only reason it's not perfect score is my bias against the palace itself. That's not fair, is it? But it's how I'm ranking it. The next arc is what I'd consider to be the true peak of the vanilla game. It's got a great palace, a perfect conclusion to Shido's story, even though he's not the greatest antagonist ever, and the tragic end of Akechi. There's one thing I have against the arc, though. I'm sure you know what it is if you've played. Starting off, I do have to say that it's kind of funny how many times Ren has the opportunity to recognize Shido as the man who ruined his life. I say funny because the player will 100% recognize Shido at the very first opportunity. I don't find it to be a horrible writing decision, just strange. When it is fully realized who Shido is to Ren, though, I love how all the thieves are immediately ready to support him and fight with him. Of course, it's also because Shido's responsible for everything else in the game, but you get what I mean. The confrontation with Shido's shadow self is also perfect. From dialogue to music to themes to mechanics, it's just perfect in every way. The cherry on top is the one-on-one at the very end, which is either a joke if you have hindsight or lucky, or a nightmare if you're unprepared. After the battle, the real Shido takes the temporary death serum, which is the worst name ever, which causes his palace to crumble. He hopes this will kill the thieves. Thanks to Ryuji's heroism and near sacrifice, your team is able to escape. And this next scene is the one thing that I actually hate about the game. Everyone believes Ryuji died, and mourns him. When Ryuji shows up, extremely lucky to be alive, he gets beaten by some of the characters for making them cry. Haha, funny, right? I get that Ryuji was kinda insensitive upon seeing them crying, but really? It could have ended after the initial smack. Why knock him out and leave him? That's how you treat your hero? My favorite part of the arc is the surprise encounter with Akechi. I love it because of the sheer amount of character development he gets. First, he is regretful that he and Ren had to become enemies. Then, after expressing his need for vengeance against Shido, he becomes wholly ruthless. Once defeated the first time, he goes even deeper into his jealousy and rage to the point where he makes his persona make him psychotic. Only through his defeat is he humbled. He realizes that he's been fighting for nothing, and when the thieves ask him if he wants to help change Shido's heart, he kind of breaks. Unable to believe they would ally with someone who just tried to kill them all, he asks why they don't dispose of him. And it's pretty simple. He was used by Shido and wasn't himself. Before an actual response could be given, Shido's cognition of Akechi appears, revealing that Akechi would have been killed after he outlived his usefulness. This appears to truly shock Akechi. Suddenly, many shadows appear and Akechi is given a choice. Kill the Phantom Thieves to save himself or die right there. He chooses to close the bulkhead between the two groups, trapping himself with the shadows and saving the thieves. In his final moments, Akechi wishes for the Phantom Thieves to end Shido's crimes. Now, I don't know how many people took this wish to heart, but I did. I know I was thinking of him when Shido confessed his crimes. Speaking of, there's absolutely no public reaction to Shido's change of heart, despite all the things he did. You know, ordering assassinations, theft, upon others. The people still want him to lead the country. Why is this? The answer is held within the final arc. By my descriptions, you could probably tell that this is by far one of my favorites, so it should come as no surprise that I would rate it a 10 out of 10. Our first final arc is Yaldabaoth. The answer to the people's apathy towards Shido crimes is him, the manifestation of people's desires to live without having to think for themselves, to be told by someone else what they must do. I have very little to say about this one, weirdly. The tone it sets is pretty great, and it's the Phantom Thieves' final desperate heist to change the hearts of everyone. The most notable moments of the arc come at the very last moments. The twins merging, Mishima's call to action, Satanael's appearance, the death of the false god. All of these are amazing things, but I just haven't got anything to say other than amazing. I can say what I dislike, though. I dislike how after Mementos and reality merge, every character loses their will to fight and doubts what they've been doing the whole game. I feel the whole Velvet Room section kind of sucks. It's just a very long, very boring exposition dump and retread of everyone's character arcs. That's the only thing I actually dislike about the arc, though. The final battle is great, and everything around it's very enjoyable. Except for the Velvet Room section. I'd say this one's an 8 out of a 10. Yeah! Now, our next one. This is the true finale. And a worthy one, filled with great character arcs and an interesting story premise. Maruki's false reality where everyone's happy but no one can choose for themselves is a great way to cap off the game. It's like an extension of Yaldabaoth, giving you the choice to accept the reality. Not once, but twice is pretty cool too, even if it's more effective at the second opportunity and just sort of happens at the first. I know that nobody considers the stay ending to be the best one, at least not that I've heard, but I really appreciate the inclusion. While our characters have the will to fight against a reality where everything's handed to them and they need not change, I can't say that I'd do the same for sure. The ending itself has unsettling undertones, though. For the most part, I can't place it, but some glaring examples are Akechi and Sumire. Akechi never gets to be himself, even in Maruki's perfect world. Nor can he be in control of his own destiny. A tragedy, both of these. For one, Akechi was always under the control of someone, be it Shido as his assassin, or Maruki in his reality. He never got to truly act on his own behalf, and if he did, it was never in a peaceful time. That's a big reason why he opposes Maruki. The other major casualty of Maruki's reality you are a direct witness to is Sumire Yoshizawa. You help her to stop rejecting herself, no matter how painful it is to live with her pain. Her arc is a story of growth through it and the importance of pain. When she eventually is ready to live for herself, she goes forth with her sister in mind, not to live as her, but to live for her. Now, imagine seeing her through her pain, only to accept Maruki's reality and have it all reduced to nothing. Sumire would return to being Kasumi. Maruki fancies himself a savior, and while he's not a bad person, he refuses to accept that people can live with pain. The day before the final confrontation, he asks about Sumire and doubts it when you tell him how she's doing. I'm not going to go into Maruki that much, but he is definitely the best antagonist the game has to offer. The only one who isn't evil. He's sympathetic because of his cause, and like Sumire, you'd known him all game, and are probably in a position where you like him quite a bit. He once expresses his displeasure in his limited ability to help people, and when his wish of being able to help everyone's granted, of course he embraces it. His pleas for you to live in his world throughout the arc are a nice touch as well, and sell his desperation to help everyone. The finale is absolutely perfect. The checkmate cutscene is not only exciting, but it also enforces the convictions of everyone one last time. Not only that, but the finishing touch of Maruki asking you to kill his regrets. God damn, once again, perfection. You could probably guess by now, but this arc is a 10 out of 10. Onto the ranking. At the top, Maruki, no doubt. Runner-up is Shido, but that's pretty much tied with Kamoshida. Then Nijima, Futaba, Madarame, Yaldabaoth, Okumura, Kaneshiro. Okay, that's it, goodbye.